Okay, let's start. Thank you all for coming. This is gonna be a talk about kiosks, and this is the official name of the talk. In fact, the unofficial name of it would be preventing people from playing Candy Crush. Because when you build a kiosk that is a single purpose device, that is meant that you put it out there in order to run one app and one app only, the last thing you want your users to be able to do is to close that app and go play Candy Crush or something else that they want. And the kiosk use case in business is growing pretty rapidly. More and more businesses are getting automated, and thus they want to use kiosks or digital signages or queue management systems that are based on Android. So it's quite possible that you may encounter your next project as a kiosk one. And the thing is that the mindset that you need to have in order to do a kiosk project is quite different from mobile applications that you may be used to. For instance, in mobile world, data is expensive and the power is limited. That is, we know that people are using mobile network, and where they pay per megabyte if they're not on unlimited plan, and the power that, like, the phone uses a battery, which means that the power is never enough. But in kiosk's case, the kiosk is stationary. You put it in some place, you connect it to Wi-Fi or via LAN network, and it means that the data is cheap. You can transfer whatever you want and however much you want, and the power, like, it's connected to power outlet. It's connected to a power station, so basically the power is unlimited, and this allows us to do a lot of cool things that we wouldn't be able to do on mobile. For instance, we can do constant checks with the server, like in order to report the current state of the device, and do requests, data-heavy requests, once in a minute, for instance, something that we wouldn't be normally be able to do on a mobile use case. Then there is, on mobile, we have a bunch of interesting things like Google Play services and built-in tools, something like as trivial as keyboard. However, on kiosk, Google Play services are not always available, and this is a problem because of some licensing things and connected to hardware that we'll talk about later. And also, if talking about keyboards, well, if you are to use the regular keyboard of Gboard or Swift key or something else, then you risk the keyboard exposes the system, so it means that users will be able to do some interesting stuff there, and theoretically they can close your app and go play Candy Crush, something that we don't really want. So this is also kind of a thing. The next thing is that mobile, when doing things for mobile, we're only concentrating basically on software things. But in kiosk, we not only have to think about software, but also have to take into account the hardware and all the interesting problems that come with it. That is the hardware, the screen, the battery, the licensing that comes with it, etc. So you may wonder why I know all of this, because I currently work at Ginosi, where we build an end-to-end hospitality management technology, and we're also building a hotel self-check-in kiosk. So I want to share some of my experience with you so that you know where to look for trouble and possibly avoid it. So when thinking of kiosk types of projects, we have to think of them as like mission to Mars kinds of things. What it means, like, imagine you're building a rover that you're about to send to Mars. What it means that if something goes wrong with it, there is no one that will go and fix it. So you have to build some remote maintenance and remote maintenance infrastructure, and you also have to be able to to know its current state, like what's it's doing, is it online, does it have power, etc. And also you have to take into account that some green little Martians come to this thing and try to play with it. You have some reasonable protection for not allowing it to do. So let's look what it means in practice. Basically, there are two ways of how you can lock the device. The first is making your app a device owner. You can use this command from Device Policy Manager, like set device owner. It's pretty simple. And then your app becomes device owner. Effectively, it's the same thing as this app of Android, Find My Android thing. It gives you complete control over the device. You can reboot it, refresh it, restart it, update it, do whatever you want. But of course, all of these goodies come at a cost. You need a rooted Android. It won't work on any Android. So once you're a device owner, you can go through the path of device lockdown. So how easy it is. So first you have to disable keyguard. And disable status bar so that users won't be able to swipe down and poke with Wi-Fi or settings and other things that are on status bar. And you also don't want your app to be locked so that users won't be able to do that, because it's not mobile, it's kiosk, it's always on, and people always should be able to use it. The other step that you need to go through is to disable these soft keys, because otherwise people will be able to easily close the app and go do whatever they want. Basically, there are two ways of doing this. There is this first way, that is to change system build profile, which is a terrible way to do it. Don't do it if you ever happen to see this solution on internet, because it's very unstable and it's not a good solution. The good solution would be to use this command, set prop this to 0 or 1, and it will allow you to show or not show the soft keys dynamically, depending on your use case. But there are not only soft keys, but there are also hardware keys, for instance, volume and power keys, and you have to just override them so as users won't be able to poke with the system through the hardware keys as well. Well, and now you may be thinking, like, this is too much work. Isn't there any easier, perhaps, way to do it? Well, before some time ago there wasn't, but now Google released a new API. It's called Android Management API, which is exactly for this use case. So what you do, you go to their console, you create an enterprise, and then you create policies which you put under this enterprise. And these policies are quite easy JSON kinds of things, like safe boot disable true, keyguard disable true, and stuff like that. You describe declaratively what state you want your device to be, and then as a result, it generates a QR code. And you can enroll your devices with a QR code. Now, a little secret that you might not know, during the Android setup on this welcome screen, if you tap 10 times on this welcome string, it will a QR code scanner will activate, so that you can use this QR code scanner in order to read the QR that you've generated previously, and so your device will set up as an enrolled device into this enterprise, and the policy that you've declared earlier will automatically apply to it. And it's really good. It's great and it's fun. However, there are some caveats, namely that in order to use this API, you need Google Play services on your device. And you remember that we had to take hardware into account as well. And this means that Google Play services is tightly connected with the hardware that we use. So there are basically two options that we have, like off-the-shelf device and custom hardware. If we get off-the-shelf device, it's amazing, it's ready to use, the Android is up to date, we have Google Play services, no licensing keys, costs, etc. But the problem is that these off-the-shelf devices are not meant to be used as kiosks, which means that the battery is being under constant stress. It's not designed for this. The screen is gonna be always on and always at full brightness, and it's not designed for this. And since the hardware is not for kiosk, it is possible that if you use off-the-shelf device, the battery might swallow or the screen may go crazy. So it's not maybe the best case for using as kiosks. So you can use custom hardware which is exactly designed for this use case. However, the problem with that would be that they use older Android, because it's difficult for hardware manufacturers to keep with the pace of Android development. So the Android version would be a little bit older, and you would need to license your hardware with Google in order to use Google Play services and all the goodies that it provides. And the licensing costs money, and it takes some time, something like about 6 weeks and up to $10,000. So if you're not into much of a scale for kiosk, this might not be an option for you. So we choose the hardware and we kind of done, but not completely, because that's not everything that you have to do in order to cover the use case. There is also hiding the system, because there is nothing more nothing worse when people come to your kiosk and see some system messages or pop-ups around. So you have to handle crashes, for instance, and you handle them with uncaught exception handler. But the problem is that we encountered that the Crashlytics or some whatever other crash reporting solution that you may use is also using this uncaught exception handler. So if you override it with your custom thing, then it's very much possible that your crashes won't be reported to your Crashlytics or other solutions. So when handling the crashes on kiosk, you also have to send the crash reports manually, so you don't lose this valuable data. The other thing you have to think about is ANRs, Android not responding, and there is this wonderful lib which does the job quite well. And also system dialogues, which you handle by this callback, like on window focus change, and you just dismiss them. You don't want any. When the app is locked, you don't want your users to see anything other than your app. Not talking about Candy Crush. And there are some other things as well, like you can set your app to start on boot. That is, once the kiosk is set up, whatever you do, even if users be able to reset or restart it, whenever they turn it on boot, your app will be on screen. And also set brightness 100%, because since the kiosk is put in a closed space and there may be sun or too bright environment, then you also need to set brightness 100%. So as to handle for that. So that's about locking, but locking is not enough. We have to think about the remote monitoring and maintenance of the device, because it's out there and there is nobody to take care of it. So how do we monitor? There are basically 3 ways to do it. There is we can create a socket connection through which we monitor its state. Is it online or offline? But and it can work basically, but the problem with socket is that it depends on your backend. For instance, if your backend is in PHP, PHP is not that good with sockets, so it may not be a good solution for your particular setup. So what you can do is to use this I'm alive heartbeat signal that you send periodically at some regular intervals, and since you don't have a power problem, you can do it once in a minute or once in 30 seconds or even more frequently. What it does is it says to backend I'm alive, I'm alive, I'm alive, and it sends the current state information like the Wi-Fi signal, the battery level, if it's plugged or unplugged, and it helps with debugging a lot. Like if your kiosk went down and the last reported heartbeat is that the battery level is low and it was unplugged, then most probably it just died, or it lost connection to internet or whatever. And there is push, like you can check the status of the device by sending push from the server to the device, so that device will report its current state. The same goes with maintenance, because you want to be able to maintain the device, like update the software, reboot it, refresh it, and do some other housekeeping work on the device. So it goes with the same push infrastructure as well. So you push the button on a server, it sends a push, and the device does its magic. And a quick note about UIUX. The thing is that no one on earth wants to use your kiosk. It's like there are no users that wake up in the morning and think like, okay, I want to use this kiosk, and that's why. And you have to appreciate that. So the UI UX should be very clean and to not bother the users that much. An important thing is that if your kiosk involves data entry, then it's good to select a screen with 4:3 aspect ratio, because once you have this keyboard popping up from the bottom of the screen, you will have very little space on top if you are with 16:9. So 4:3 aspect ratio is a good one. So to sum up, it depends. Doing kiosk requires not only understanding of software and Android, of how it works, but also requires hardware and understanding of hardware and how it's going to work, because it's different from mobile use case, because it's always connected and it's always on. And if you do all of this, if you create UI UX good, and users are not able to do anything else rather than do their check-in or get their ticket for a queue or whatever else, the experience would be delicious, and they'll be happy, and you and your business hopefully as well. Thank you. That's it. If we have time, there are if there are questions, we can address them. If no, yes.
If I have 300 or 400 kiosks, I need to set them up manually for each of them.
I'm sorry.
I cannot automate the setting of the early settings with the QR code or the.
Yeah, if you go with Android Management API, then yes, you during the setup you have to tap 10 times on welcome and read the QR code. But since it doesn't involve any complicated things, like they don't have to enter some code or tap somewhere, there is really nothing to do. Just tap 10 times and scan a QR code, and you're done. It's pretty easy and straightforward. So no, but once you've done it, all the rest is automated. Because it's about enrollment. The system should know somehow that this device is the device that you want to use with the system. But once it's enrolled, the rest is just pretty straightforward. Any other? No? Yes.
What kind of custom hardware have you used in practical projects?
Custom hardware, it's there are suppliers. Most of them are in China, or there are resellers that resell hardware that is manufactured in China. So basically, you find suppliers in China that do this, and then work with them. one of the cons of using custom hardware is that you have to handle supply chain management, because you have to talk to all of those guys and communicate with them, get the kiosks, and test the hardware. But there are some specialized companies. They're not, there are not big name companies that everyone knows about, but there are some specialized Chinese companies that do this kind of stuff. So if you want to do hardware, go to China and find a reliable supplier there. that's the shortcut to it. Yes?
Did you consider doing your own run, Android run? Did your whole system connect your own firmware of Android?
Home?
Your run, Android run.
Yeah.
Operating system.
Yes. That's a good question. In fact, what we wanted to do, like for the first iteration, like the way we went about this project, for the first iteration, we just wanted to put something out there to generate business value. So what we did, we got an off-the-shelf device. We didn't mingle with all of these hardware kinds of things, and we just put it out there, and it worked, and it generated some business value. The time we kind of try to shorten the time to money, but then it turned out that it's not the perfect solution because of the numerous problems, not only related to hardware that's not designed for an always-on use case, but also because of software, because Google was pushing some unexpected updates, although we disabled it, but somehow some security stuff sneaked in, and it kind of broke the system because it was rooted and it was not supposed to be rooted. So that's why for the next iteration we went with custom hardware and custom Android. And in this case, like this is kind of the second step of it, when you get the hardware and you ask them to customize the Android however you want. And the third one would be if you create the hardware and generate the Android configuration that fits your needs perfectly. That's it. Okay. Thank you.